Tourette's podcast is not a medical advice show. It's a show about experiences. In the course of that, we may talk about medications or therapies or stories from the doctor's office, but don't mistake any of that for medical advice or direction. It's not. Get that only from people or places licensed or certified to give it, not from a massively fun and action-packed podcast about our life experiences. Such as
one time where I was just going out and about, just going shopping and doing some errands, and my tics were quite loud. And then a security guard approached me, and I instinctively knew what it was going to be about.
This is Tourette's podcast, made possible with support of the Tourette Association of America and part of the Geeks Rising Network. Hey, it's Ben. So one thing I didn't notice last week, and thanks to a listener named Micah who did hear this, I had a short in one of my microphone cables, and it was making some noise and resulting in not the best audio quality on my end. So apologies for that if you noticed that. I've already addressed it, I think. So we should have a better listening experience this episode. Thank you for all your feedback. Alyssa says, I just found the podcast this week and have been binge listening before I get back to teaching next week. My son was diagnosed this summer, and these episodes have been so helpful and informative. Thanks for all you do. Brittany says, thank you. I'm brand new to Tourette's. My 8-year-old son was recently diagnosed, and I just feel so helpless. I'm trying to learn as much as I can so I can support him the best way possible. I appreciate all I've learned from the Tourette's Podcast discussion group, which, by the way, you should join over on Facebook, the Tourette's Podcast discussion group. Miles says, I love you, Tourette's Podcast discussion group, for all you do for us. Cheers to all to season 8. One love. And that's from Miles, specifically Miles Walker, aka King Tourette Syndrome, who advocates for Tourette all day long. This is a fact. Hope you're doing well, Miles. Shelby has a question. How many tics do you have at one time? And the answer to that for me is, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 different tics running concurrently, 1 or 2 vocal tics, and then the rest being bodily movements like jerks, muscle tensing, things like that. Remember, Tourette is the co-occurrence of vocal and motor tics, but there are other kinds of tic disorders as well. Some people have motor tics, but not vocal tics. Some say it's all the same thing anyway in terms of life experience, and I'm down with that. Any kind of tic disorder is welcomed on this podcast, just so you know. On this episode, we're heading to New Zealand, specifically Dunedin, New Zealand, which leads to a revelation for me in the course of this conversation with our guest, Mads Harrop. Mads is a singer-songwriter whose latest EP just came out a couple days ago. It's called My Chemical Fix. And she talks about it here, the lyrics, how it relates to her life experience with Tourette Syndrome, with autism, with anxiety. Mads is a really great lyricist when it comes to stuff like that. Matter of fact, the first song I heard from her was called Hiding in Color, which directly talks about Mads' experience when she was 19 and trying to deal with it all. Funny enough, it reminds me of an early 90s band I really loved called The Medicine. Here's a little bit of that song.
I am living and I'm breathing. Body forces in the way. Shoes are silent, they move softly in the way they try to stay. Isolated, I am diving. Can you see the way I see? We can get there. I can take these voices just helping me. And I'm hiding in color. And I'm hiding in
Hello, kia ora. I'm Mads Harrop, and I am from New Zealand. Yep, and I live in Dunedin, and it's where I study at the moment. So I'm a musician and a music student. And yeah, I got Tourette's in my first year of university 3 years ago, and now I'm in my 4th year, about to finish my undergrad degree, and I'm doing postgrad at the same time.
So coming from Dunedin, you're a musician, and there's a big musical tradition from Dunedin. I mean, there are bands like The Clean, The Chills. Trying to think of who else. I mean, were the Verlaines, I think, maybe from Dunedin?
Yeah,
I think so.
The Verlaines were from Dunedin, and I actually had Graham Downs as one of my teachers for a couple of years.
No way.
Yeah.
No way. That is so cool. That is so cool. Yeah. So I guess for people listening, the Verlaines were a band from, I guess, the early 80s in Dunedin, New Zealand. And they're fantastic. They have a song called Death and the Maiden, which is one of the catchiest things. That's one of the catchiest songs I've ever heard in my life. I love it. The 3Ds, they're from Dunedin too.
Yeah, the 3Ds.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that's so. I mean, was there already kind of a support of music pushing you along, or like how did you get into music?
Well, I got into music because my dad was a musician, and he introduced me to a lot of great music, like T-Rex, for example. And ever since he introduced me to T-Rex, that's when I decided to get into songwriting. So I write songs as well, and I actually write a lot of songs about my Tourette's because for me it's a very comfortable way for me to express myself and talk about my feelings and just be really open.
You sent me a song a while back. Was it Hiding in Color? Was that the song that you sent me?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. So I remember listening to that, and I really, really liked it. And it had that sort of kind of early 90s color to it. I really, really liked it. And there was a lyric, and I know sometimes we should just like let lyrics be and not try to explain them, but there was one line that I heard more than once where you say, I'm drowning in my own armor. That feels like something related to your experience with Tourette or masking or hiding or just something like that. I mean, am I onto something, or am I completely making stuff up? Or?
Oh, yeah, you're definitely onto something. Yeah, I actually wrote Hiding in Color literally just after I got diagnosed with Tourette's. And it's quite an angry sort of song, but at the time I was writing it, I was trying to just hope for positivity, with my Tourette's.
So you said at the time that you were 19, I think, when you wrote it, and that was just a tumultuous time. So was the scariness of that time period, I mean, was that pretty much all revolving around your tics or your diagnosis, or what was happening with you?
So I actually got it right after I came home from university, and I'm not sure, I think I may have developed Tourette's probably as a result of anxiety because, I don't know. I remember when I used to get quite anxious, I'd start doing like these little funny kind of things, like twitch kind of things. And
sure.
Yeah, that all kind of started when I first came to uni. And but the real challenge was when I came home from uni for the Easter break, and I was sitting on the couch, and then I can remember all of a sudden I started like making these weird screaming noises and all these weird movements, and they were really, really violent. And I remember that first few nights when I first started noticing these tics was that I remember my mum was saying she used to give me a hug and stuff right before I'd go to sleep. And she'd be like lying there, and she used to describe it as like trying to hold a washing machine,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So anxiety was kind of the clue that tics were going to come out. Is that how it was working?
That's what I was. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Because it works kind of that way with me. Like, when I'm in an anxious situation, I will tend to get a little bit more ticky. When I'm, say, stimulated by something I'm watching on TV or something I'm working on, that'll set them off. But other times, there are certain activities I can get into, like music, where my tics will kind of take a step back. And maybe we can talk about that in a little bit. But it's a difficult thing to kind of wrap your head around when something like this is setting on. This had to be an isolating kind of feeling for you, right?
Very isolating, yeah. And I still find it a little bit tricky to deal with even now. And I use my songs because I want people to be more understanding, and it is very difficult. I've had to deal with a few people that don't really understand, but most of the time, actually, you'll be surprised, which is a good thing. Actually, 99% of people that I meet, they all understand, and they're all very, kind and accepting. And I remember when I first got it, I was staying in a hall of residence at that time, and I had to, after I got the diagnosis, I had to take a couple of weeks off just to do work from home and get therapy and all of that to help with the tics. And then, I actually went back to the hall of residence I was staying at during the holidays, and only some of the students were still there. And I had to stand up and explain my Tourette's to everyone that was there at dinner time. And they were all just like, yeah, we love you, Mads. Yeah. We accept, we totally understand. And then got invited out. I got invited to spend some time with friends afterwards, going to the movies.
When you said you had to stand up and explain your Tourette, was that something expected of you, or is that something that you decided to do yourself?
It was something I wanted. I can't remember, but it was something I think I had to do.
Yeah.
So that everyone would know. And I had to say, look, you might hear me making strange noises at night, but don't be alarmed. They're just tics.
Yeah. I mean, because sometimes it's really difficult to figure out a way to kind of put it into common words and make it relatable. It's one thing to talk about the brain and how it works, but when you're trying to kind of relate Tourette to quote unquote everyday people, how did you do that?
When I get put into situations where I had to explain myself, if people didn't know, they'd just ask and then they'd understand. Yeah. The hardest thing for me is just my tics can often be quite loud and aggressive, and I'm really sorry if this is triggering, but I have coprolalia, which is the swearing tic, and there have been times where people would misunderstand and they would tell me off for it. They'd say hey, stop that, and things like that. And that for me is understandable, but it's really frustrating, because it's just well, yeah, I get you didn't know, but I can't control it. It'd be nice if you could just at least bear that in mind.
I mean, yeah, that's the ask, that people at least understand where you're coming from. This is not something that's voluntary for you. And
actually lost my song off my most recent EP release, which was released yesterday. My Chemical Fix.
Yeah, well, let's plug that real quick before we forget, and we can do it at the end too. Could you tell us where we can find that?
All streaming platforms: Bandcamp, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I'm not sure if it's on SoundCloud yet, but yeah, you can get it everywhere else. It's called My Chemical Fix, and So the opening track of that song was actually inspired by experiences I'd had with my Tourette's. It's just with bus drivers not being very understanding. I'd be standing outside the bus, and then there was one instance where I was about to get on the bus to go back to uni, and I started getting the swearing tic, and the bus driver was not happy and didn't understand, and I had to explain to him that I had Tourette's, and he was just, the bus driver was telling me off and just saying things like, who's swearing? And I was like, oh, it's me, I have Tourette's. And then he was like, none of that, eh? And then I had to me and my mum just had to explain to him. And yeah, I can remember just hopping on the bus, just feeling absolutely embarrassed and just,
So you got singled out.
shamed and on the brink of crying. And then similar incident like that happened, 5 days later. And I can remember just going home that weekend. I was just feeling so, upset about what had just happened. And I remember literally going to my room and crying, and then I picked my guitar up and wrote Lost for Words, and then 2 hours later it was the song was born. So being able to communicate what I'm feeling at that moment and try turning it into a song is just such a beautiful thing for me. And other
Right.
people
Yeah.
other people resonate with it,
That is so cool that you can do that. I mean, it's easy for me to be afraid of people because I worry about what's coming
Same
or
here.
what questions and things like that. And it can be frustrating to have that on repeat to where it becomes an expectation. But you being able to channel it the way you channel it and turn it into art is, I mean, bad situations are bad situations, but being able to turn it into art is really powerful.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Like, nowadays, there are certain places and certain people, that I find can be a bit triggering. Security guards, they're definitely one of them, because I had an experience one time where I was just going out and about, just going shopping and doing some errands, and my tics were quite loud. And then next minute, security approached me, and a security guard approached me and said, he said, "Excuse me." And then I instinctively knew what it was going to be about. And I said, "Oh, is this about me?" And I said something about my tics because they were quite loud and they were the swearing tics. And he said, "We've had a few complaints about it." And I had to explain. And that for me was just so infuriating. Like, why can't people just, it's just, it just feels so strange that it would get to the point where someone would call security on me for that, like,
Right.
Yeah, I understand that sometimes people don't know, and people will, there will be some people out there that think I may just be swearing, and that's understandable. But, it's very, when I get put into those situations, it's very frustrating for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, whenever I'm being interviewed about my Tourette's, I always talk about some other people's perspectives on it when they first see me ticking. And it's just like,
right.
I understand their perspectives at first. I want them to understand mine in return,
Right. Yeah. It's almost, you can maybe see where certain people are coming from when they express concern about somebody cursing or whatever it is, just somebody on the outside who doesn't know what's going on. But yet you do hope that that becomes a learning moment for people who were maybe complaining about it versus being.
Yeah, see, but as soon as I explained to the security guard, he was like, "Okay, I'll pass that on to the other people." I was just thinking, thank you, but still, it's exactly like, I always describe that kind of feeling as, someone telling you off for something you didn't mean to do, that kind of frustrating sort of feeling.
Well, yeah, you don't want to go out and worry that you're going to be labeled a problem in some way. I mean, that's what creates situations where people want to stay inside. I mean, this is, and I can speak on that from personal experience. My tics have never been. I've always been able to figure out ways of masking them and things like that, and making them kind of flow with what's going on in public. And sometimes people do notice things. I know my friends have noticed things, but you don't want to get to the point where you worry that you're going to be perceived as a problem, because that has ripple effects over everything you do for the day. How natural you can be, how much of yourself you can be. I mean, you're really closing up.
Yeah. See, and that's what's that's one of the things I find like really, damaging about my Tourette's is that, it's just really, damaged my self-esteem in that way, and I'm very open about how my tics have affected my mental health. Like there've been times where there've actually been times where they've made me like super anxious. I'd get a panic attack, and
Yep.
And yes, it's also affected my mental health to the point where I've had to go to counselling because of how how much it's affected me, and how much it's hurt me. And it's not only the tics are not only physically painful, like they don't only just leave me exhausted and all of that. Especially the vocal tics, they always leave me, it's very, painful for me too, emotionally,
Yeah.
It's just, because I say like, they make me say horrible words and horrible things and all of that. And I just do not want to say those things,
Things you don't intend.
Yeah. And those that know me, those like my friends and my family and all that, and I myself know I'm the complete opposite of what my tics are. But it's just when I'm out in public, and sometimes people, perceive me, just how people out in public sometimes perceive me. But most of the time, they're understanding, they're okay.
Yeah.
And that actually makes me really happy and really thankful. And if there's one thing that living with Tourette's has taught me, is that it's actually taught me much more about the power of kindness, and how kind most people are and accepting, and it's just that for me, it makes me really happy. And when I'm playing music in particular, because I go to music school and I study music at the University of Otago, and I've got a great band and great friends and lots of great musician friends. When I'm with my friends in particular, my musician friends, it's just, they're all like super understanding and super accepting, and it's just a great community. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always found music to be a really great community, in that people often use music as a therapy for whatever they're going through in their lives. And, it could be Tourette, or it could be, just some other, like a problem at work or whatever it is. Like music helps you escape. And does it do anything for your tics? Do your tics take a step back and kind of let you be when you're in the zone with music? Or, I mean, it does that with me, and I've heard it with other people too.
Yeah. When I'm on stage, it's almost, my tics completely go away. And it's amazing, because if you see me on stage, you kind of forget that I have Tourette's, and, I'm just enjoying myself and just having a great time. And
that's so cool.
Yeah. It's just such an amazing feeling. And, lots of musicians that do gigs, everyone just loves the feeling of being on stage, and me personally, it's great fun, because I can just do what I love and, just be myself, and and when I get into it on stage, I'm just dancing around, and the audience is getting into it as well, and it's amazing, and
that's so cool.
Actually, the middle song on my EP, I Want Chemicals, is actually about CBD and how I was wanting CBD oil to help with my Tourette's. And CBD oil is incredibly difficult to get in New Zealand, and it's very expensive. But so I remember at that time I was writing the song, I was wanting, access to the medicine, and because I read about it that it was going to help with my tics, and it's it has helped, and it's helped with my anxiety too. And, you know, when I play that one on stage, everyone loves it, you know, like.
That's cool.
And especially there's a bit in the song where it's a break and I have the drums doing like a 4-bar drum solo, and that for me is really good because the audience really gets into it. And, you know, when the audience really gets into my songs that are about certain aspects of my Tourette's, that for me is just great, you know.
But it's like getting to know you through music is a really great angle.
Yeah. Yeah, it is actually really good. And, you know, I because I listen to a lot of punk music and I love rock music, I write lots of angry, you know, rock songs and things like that. And I've just gotten to that into doing that punk thing where you try and like scream into the mic while like
right,
mic.
yeah. That's so when you're recording, just speaking of which, because sometimes recording, you're playing music and it's fun, but it's also kind of a nervous process because you want to make sure you get it right, because you're actually, you know, it's not, you want to be accurate and you want to play your songs right in a live setting, but when you're recording, you really want to try to get it right. Does that interfere with your tics? Because that is a time I think where my tics might come out a bit when I'm recording.
Yeah. No, my tics are usually pretty good because I'm calm and I'm trying to focus on the music.
Nice.
But yeah, I always make sure that when I'm working with sound engineers and producers, I always make sure to let them know I've got Tourette's, and just to say, look, after every, you know, at least once, like every 45 minutes or an hour, I will need to take breaks to let my tics out. And then, yeah. Right. Yeah, I've got a studio at home, so they're very understanding, everyone there. So, yeah.
That's cool. So you have a home studio and you can kind of record at your own pace.
Yeah.
Take breaks as you wish, and that's really cool.
Yeah, Sublime. Sublime Studios.
Oh, that's what you named it, Sublime Studios?
Yeah, it's actually my dad's studio. And yeah, see, when I'm in there are certain places that I love going to, and just to help me calm down and things. And the studio is definitely one of them, you know, because it's my safe space. And
yeah,
often if I'm at home and if there's no other people and they're recording it, I can go in there and, you know, write music and play music and things like that. It's very cool.
That's cool. You know, like earlier we were talking about how, you know, you take experiences, I guess, positive or negative, and they kind of root into songs for you. How often does that, is that a typical process for you, or how do you write songs?
So usually it'll start from an idea, and then it'll stem from that. Yeah. So I've written lots of songs. I write lots of songs about being neurotypical because I'm also autistic and I have anxiety and ADHD. And yeah, so I write songs just about basically how I see the world. And I have a mentor for at university, a songwriting mentor, and because I meet up with my teacher for my honours, and I can remember actually being in a meeting with her one time, and I can remember her saying to me, the most interesting thing about your songs, Mads, is the way that you think and see things differently and from a different perspective to a neurotypical person, and the way that comes out in your songs, you know, and I, you know, write songs basically, you know, from my experiences, you know.
Right.
I wouldn't say like I'm your typical songwriter.
Right. So are you pretty front and center with your lyrics? I think what you sent me, you did publish the lyrics for Hiding in Color. This just seems to be such a central part of your music and getting to know you is your lyric writing.
Yeah. So Yeah, and lyric writing is also another really important process for me because the lyrics, in my opinion, I think they're one of the most interesting and most important parts of contemporary songwriting. You know,
Right.
if in my opinion, if lyrics don't, the lyrics should always sound interesting, and yeah, because interesting lyrics make the song in itself more, engaging and more easy to understand. Like, yeah.
Easy to understand, but you want to spend more time with it too, because just because of the interesting quality of the lyrics. I mean, I'm not just being nice. You are a really good lyricist. The stuff you sent me was really, really good. Because it wasn't just so front and center that it was sterile. But I could still follow what was going on. Like there was still something I had to figure out along the way to try to understand what you were talking about. But I wasn't lost with any of it. One of my dog is walking around the room. She's putting little taps into the microphone.
Aww.
Good girl. Good girl.
What's her name?
Her name is Data.
Aww.
DATA.
Oh, actually, on that note, I've been chatting. My mum and I've been actually considering getting me a therapy dog, like to help specifically with my Tourette's, and the great thing about having therapy dogs and service dogs is that you can take them out literally to any public place, because therapy dogs and service dogs, they're exceptions. Because,
right.
Some people with disabilities, need them. And yeah. Plus I just find like when I'm around dogs and all that, that's another thing that actually sometimes makes my tics calm down a bit and my anxiety as well, because I love dogs and
Yeah, my animals are the same way. I have 2 cats and a dog.
Aww.
And it's almost like they can sense like whatever vibe I'm putting into the room. And if I am feeling anxious, somehow they're really amenable to me. And, they'll keep me company. They'll just kind of emerge out of nowhere and keep me company. I have 1 cat who's with me at all times. He's always with me. He's always calming me down. He's always getting me through the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it truly does help. These aren't service animals that I have, but they truly do help.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, hey?
That'd be amazing if you got a service dog.
Yeah, it would be, because that means I can be a bit more calm, and I guess if I get a service dog, it'll be good, because I can imagine if you train service dogs, if the trainers train service dogs for like certain clients, they would probably train them to deal with the client's specific needs. And I can imagine if I had a service dog for my Tourette's, the trainer could train it to, help me deal with my tics. I don't know, like do something every time I start ticking.
Kind of cursing as I go. Just accept who you don't know. It's balloons and bubble gum. Then I'm lost for words.
The Tourette Association of America is the premier nonprofit working to raise awareness, advance research, and provide ongoing support for those with Tourette Syndrome or a tic disorder. With a network of over 130 chapters, support groups, and centers of excellence, the TAA engages with communities across the nation in an effort to provide tools, webinars, workshops, and support for all seeking assistance. As a primary sponsor of Tourette's podcast, the TAA supports authentic conversations showcasing the diverse representation of the Tourette community. To learn more, go to tourette.org. That's TOURETTE.org. The Tourette Association of America. Uncontrollable, unstoppable.
I'm also very One thing that I think also needs to happen in New Zealand is that you might find this quite surprising, quite shocking, is that the New Zealand government doesn't recognise Tourette syndrome as a disability. Like we have a they have a health department called the Ministry of Health, and we've been trying to pledge for them to recognise that. And I've actually turned to writing protest songs about certain issues, with my Tourette's and just with
Right.
disability rights that need to be recognised as well, just in general, because if it got recognised as a disability, that would mean we can get government funding for support resources, and not only that, but resources for families, for teachers, and maybe even doctors as well.
Right.
Yeah, I can remember I actually did a presentation a couple of weeks back to a couple of med students about my Tourette's, and I was just saying it's just really, it's so strange how it's not recognised. It'd be good if it was recognised.
Yeah, I'm just seeing a change.org petition, and I'm sure there's other places where people can help out too. But I'm just finding a change.org petition to get the Ministry of Health to consider Tourette syndrome a disability. So just the impact on daily life. And actually, this is what they're talking about here. It says, currently, right now in New Zealand, the Ministry of Health does not consider Tourette syndrome a disability. Many with Tourette syndrome experience tics that have a huge impact on their everyday life. So, this is something that you feel like, seems natural that they would want to consider protecting. Yeah, I'm going to have to learn more about this.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, I'm hoping we can, raise more awareness about it. And yeah, but then again, when it comes to the awareness stuff, one thing that I'm actually super grateful for is all the modern technology and social media that's helped so many people, learn about all sorts of disabilities, not just Tourette's, but, autism, ADHD, Down syndrome, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, especially, Instagram and, whatnot.
Yeah, it's pretty neat how we're also seeing the connections and similarities in one another. Me with Tourette syndrome, my friends who are autistic, and just certain areas where we seem to overlap, where we have common areas that we can talk about. And it's nice to find community like that, and also validation. Because your experience, where you were saying earlier that it can be an isolating thing for you, or has been in your life. The podcast gets emails from people saying that it helps them feel less isolated. And that's amazing, because it can be a very, very isolating thing. And to find that community online can be a lifesaver for people.
Yeah, I get that. And plus just, reaching out for support, and there's so many communities out there, and it's just amazing,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like there's even in New Zealand, there's Tourette's Association of New Zealand. Yeah, and it was founded by the person who founded it actually has a daughter who's got Tourette's, and she's also a musician too.
Oh, nice. Have you talked with her before, or do you know who she is?
Yeah. Annalise Twemlow is the girl who's got Tourette's. She's from Christchurch, so that's in the Canterbury region of New Zealand.
Right.
Yeah, I know a couple others with Tourette's as well, and it just feels really cool, to have people reaching out and stuff, and just reaching out to other people, and yeah.
That's cool. Have you talked with other musicians who have Tourette syndrome besides her, just to see where you guys overlap when you compare notes? Because every time I do that, I find basically everything I have in common.
No, actually, I don't. Oh, actually, no, wait. Yes, I have met one other musician with Tourette's. I had a guy playing drums for me one time, and he had Tourette's, and he had but he's a great drummer, and he's gone on to do great things with his music too.
That is so cool. So, I mean, so you had kind of a Tourette band going. I'm not trying to reduce it to, this is a Tourette Syndrome band because, you stand alone as yourself.
I actually, Annalise, she's in a band called the Lunatics, and actually they're all also Kiwis with Tourette's.
Really?
They've got Spotify if you want to check them out too. They've got a really cool song called Aliens. Yeah.
The Lunatics, I'm looking them up.
Lunatics. Yeah, on Spotify. Yeah, and Annalise has got her own Spotify too. She's great.
All band. Wow. Okay. So we talked about this maybe 2 or 3 years ago on the podcast, whether there was a band whose members had Tourette syndrome, like all of them. And I'm reading the band bio. It says the Lunatics are a band of talented young people with not only a shared love of music, but also a unique difference in that all band members live with Tourette syndrome. Finally, I found a Tourette syndrome band. Like, this is what I've been kind of looking for, asking about, wanting to start, just like connect with other musicians who have Tourette syndrome and put out a record. They beat us to it.
Yeah.
So where do you want to take your music? Is this something you want to do more professionally, or you mentioned you're in university? Is there something there that's going to take precedence for you, or?
I just want to keep, writing songs and keep just doing gigs. I'd love to go on a tour one time, and I'm also not only that, but I'm also looking at being a record producer because
cool.
Because I have my parents have a recording studio back home. And ever since I started recording my songs, I was interested in recording equipment and how engineering works. So I've been learning how to use like mixing consoles and some of the different DAWs, DAWs, such as Logic and Pro Tools and all that stuff.
I'm using Reaper here.
It's very cool.
Yeah, that's a rabbit hole to go down. That's so fun. All the different microphones, all the different approaches, the way you can angle a microphone toward a drum set, and you can spend all day on that. That is so much fun to get into.
Yeah. I'm actually I've actually got a professional quality microphone that I'm speaking into right now. It's this is actually my microphone, and you can use it to record music as well as do like podcasts and everything like that. And you can get it to emulate many different studio microphones.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So with you having access to recording studios, you can you can also maybe lay down scratch tracks and ideas that come to your head and things you can come back and revisit later. Is that something that you have access to, or?
Yeah, it's not so much that. It's more just about like recording the finished product. But I have had times where I'll be in the studio and I'll be sound checking, and then I'll just play like a random chord idea or something that I quite like, and I'll just say to my sound engineer, if I think it's a really good idea for a song, or if I want to put a song together, I'll just be like, okay, hold on a minute. We need to pause the recording session just for the time being. I've got to put the song idea down. I just think it's going to work really well. And
yeah. When you get the idea, you have to preserve it.
Yeah. Often the best songs come out when inspiration hits you like bang, like you get a really great lyric idea and it fits really well with the chord idea, and you just have to stop whatever you're doing and just put the song together, and then that's like the magic that visits creatives, where it just like you can be doing something completely unrelated to music, and then the idea just hits you and you have to pause what you're doing and give it attention. Yeah.
That's so cool. So where can people who are listening You've mentioned it earlier in the show, but I want to make sure we put in a plug for everything you're doing. So where can people learn about you online? What's the best way to hear your music? The quickest way, is it Spotify?
Yep, Spotify or Bandcamp. And yeah, there's also iTunes, and as I've said before, everywhere else. Yeah, except for SoundCloud.
And Mads Harrop is spelled MadsHarrop. Is that right?
Yeah.
Nice.
And yes, I've got Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. If you guys ever want to follow me, and it's just at Mads Harrop. It's all lowercase.
Well, is there anything that we didn't get to talk about that you think is important, or anything you want people listening to know about you, your life, Tourette Syndrome, anything? I want to make sure I give you the stage for the final word.
Thank you so much, everyone, for all the love, for all the support and everything. You know, you guys are all amazing. And, I know it's not easy, with your Tourette's and all of that, and with all other comorbidities and whatnot. But yeah, there is always help out there. And so thanks for everything, guys. And, I have my new EP out, my Chemical Fix. And it's actually about, all three songs have kind of like a storyline. So got Lost for Words. That song, I'm feeling kind of anxious about my tics. And then I Want Chemicals is about me wanting CBD oil to, kind of help with my tics. And then High as a Dove is about music, being my, drug to get high on, and, the place where I can escape,
right. Right.
Yeah, be sure to check it out. And yeah.
Cool. So Mads Harrop,
Thank you.
iTunes, Bandcamp, Spotify. Mads, thank you so much. This has been so much fun talking.
Oh, thanks, Ben.
Yeah. I mean, I really liked, because I knew you were from New Zealand. I didn't know you were exactly where you were from in New Zealand. And as soon as you said it, I was like, oh man, the Clean, the Chills. Those are some of my favorite bands, the Verlaines, the 3Ds.
Yes.
Very cool.
The Dunedin sound is the most, in my opinion, I think it's the most, I'm not sure if this is my opinion, if it's a fact, but I know it's quite a famous, scene when it comes to Kiwi music. And, when most people think of Kiwi music, they often think of, Lord and whatnot, but actually there's so much more to that,
Yeah.
The Chills, the Verlaines. I mean, you guys in America, you guys got Pavement, and
yep.
Stephen Malkmus actually did a cover of Death and the Maiden.
That's right, he did. I forgot about that. Yeah. He did I think a live like studio version, or where the whole band is playing together. I remember that. I had totally forgotten about that.
Yeah, it's very cool, and it feels just, amazing to just be. You feel like you're a part of that sound, if you know what I mean,
Yeah.
And, it's just a great community, and, just fun being a musician, because you can just forget about everything around you and, just play music. And yeah, the other thing I love about being in a band and whatnot is just working, with other musicians and, being able to play music together. I mean,
right.
It's so much fun.
Yeah. Oh, that is so cool. I'm so happy you have that outlet that you're able to do. And just to be from where you're from, that I mean, it's so cool the way you're plugged in, and you have a really good way of just taking things that could be negative and making something worthwhile out of it. I mean, that just seems to be your calling. I mean, music is your calling, but this is how you're doing it. And it's so cool. Love seeing it.
Thank you. Hey, thanks so much, Ben. It's so nice to finally meet you.
Yeah.
I've been listening to Tourette's podcast for a while now, and it's so interesting, hearing other people, on the show talk about their experiences and tell their stories. from all different, walks of life and different career paths and whatnot, different interests and hobbies and whatnot. It's so cool.
Yeah. I learned something new every single episode. I mean, this time I learned some things about New Zealand that I didn't know with regard to recognition of Tourette and the chills, the Verlaines, Mads Harrop. Thanks for listening. Thanks so much to Mads Harrop for joining us from New Zealand and talking with us. Clearly, I had a good time talking music with an obviously talented person who makes art out of real experience. I'm going to post links to her Bandcamp page where you can hear and purchase her music, including her new EP, My Chemical Fix, released just a couple days ago. If you have any feedback about this episode or anything else related to tic disorders, whether you have Tourette or not, doesn't matter. Everybody's welcomed here. And that includes your feedback. You can reach me through the contact portal at tourettespodcast.com, or you can email me at tourettespodcast@gmail.com. The fastest way to get me lately is on Instagram, my personal Instagram, which is at Ben Brown Multimedia, MULTIMEDIA, or on the Tourette's Podcast Instagram. Just look it up by name, Tourette's Podcast. And don't forget The Hub, being the Tourette's Podcast discussion group on Facebook run by the amazing Sophia in the UK. She's been a priceless part of this podcast. Tell her thank you if you talk to her. The Tourette's Podcast discussion group on Facebook, where you can talk about episodes, Tourette facts, you can ask questions of the community. That's probably the most popular use of the group. Anyway, please join up if you haven't already. Thanks to the Tourette Association of America for its continued sponsorship of Tourette's Podcast. TAA is online at tourette.org, where you can find all kinds of resources and connections to make your experience with Tourette a better one. And of course, the Geeks Rising Network. Shout out to Heather Welch, another Kiwi from New Zealand. She's a podcaster on the Geeks Rising Network at geeksrising.com and a huge supporter of Tourette's Podcast. We'll be back again with another episode. Thanks for listening. This is Ben.